and welcome. I'm Sakal Bhatt and you're watching Late Edition tonight. Reacting to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's reference to Balochistan in his Independence Day speech, Pakistan formally invited India for dialogue over the Kashmir issue in a letter handed over to the Indian High Commissioner in Islamabad on Monday. An offer which New Delhi has already and most emphatically rejected. Pakistan has said it is the, and I quote, international obligation, unquote, of both the countries to resolve the Kashmir issue, notwithstanding India's insistence that it would talk on, and I quote again, contemporary and relevant issues as far as India-Pakistan relationship is concerned. Now, Pakistan's Foreign Secretary Azaz Ahmad Chaudhry invited his Indian counterpart to visit Islamabad for dialogue on Kashmir. And needless to say, India's message to Pakistan on Kashmir word is loud and clear. Once again, first walk the talk on terror. Tonight on Late Edition, we put this in perspective. India's strong and stern policy shift vis-a-vis Pakistan that reflects the core nationalistic position in the country that Kashmir unrest is outcome of Pakistan's deliberate interference, Pakistan's deliberate instigation. And to discuss that on Late Edition tonight, we're very glad to have Mr. Shiv Shankar Mukherjee, former senior diplomat and thank you very much, sir, for joining us on Late Edition, and also Dr. Sriram Cholia, expert on international relations. Thank you, Sriram, for joining us. Sir, let me come to you first. Now, this quick reaction from Pakistan within hours of PM's Independence Day speech yesterday, this handing over letter and offering once again talk on K. What does it really reflect from their side, this reaction?
Well, I think it reflects that there is no low to which the Pakistan's government can descend to in terms of its obsessive, its obsession with the desire to hurt India in every way possible. Just before this letter, which was utterly farcical, was delivered, you had this other démarche from the Pakistani Foreign Office to the High Commission, addressed to the government of India, wanting to send supplies to those affected in Kashmir and so on and so forth. So I don't think there needs to be too much analysis on this, because it simply reflects the Pakistani approach to do everything possible to needle India, to create situations which they hope will embarrass India and so on. And we are perfectly aware of that. So the very tough reaction that was given by our spokesman to that offer for help on Kashmir, stating that we've had enough of Pakistan's trade, right, which is basically terrorism, drugs and fake currency. And I think the reaction to the latest letter is not yet formally stated, but the rejection is implicit in quite a number of remarks made from the side of the government. So I think what has been done is quite the right thing, which is to dismiss these demarches, these messages to us with contempt.
Dismiss them in contempt. Sriram, let's go a little back and talk about what happened on August 14. Pakistan High Commissioner to India, Abdul Basit, he says, and I quote, Pakistan will continue to extend its full diplomatic, political and moral support to the valiant people of Jammu and Kashmir till they get their right to self-determination. And on August 15, after Independence Day speech of Prime Minister Modi, this is what we hear. What exactly is Pakistan thinking? Do you think that, first of all, there would be any takers for this kind of posturing by Pakistan as far as international community is concerned?
Well, I think they have suddenly realized that something is afoot in the Kashmir Valley, and the disturbances of the last few weeks have suddenly given them spine to believe that they can rekindle and restart the whole insurgency of the past. And they are behaving as if, we are on the cusp of another major uprising in Kashmir Valley, and they want to take advantage of it. So I think the whole narrative in Pakistan is that, the people are rising up and we have to again go to support our brethren. Unfortunately, the ground realities are quite different in Kashmir Valley, and the Pakistanis often imagine that people are waiting with welcoming arms for them to as liberators in Kashmir Valley. The reality is, in the Kashmir Valley, there may be issues and problems, but nonetheless, people are pretty disenchanted with Pakistan, by the way, and they don't realize it. So what they think is they are living in an illusory, they've built up castles that, they are somehow going to bring self-determination, quote unquote, for the Kashmiri people. And for them, I think, there is a renaissance of this whole talk about they're bringing it up at the UN, they're raising it at international fora and hoping that because of what's happening in the valley, they can now capitalize on it. And they think that India is vulnerable. But I think Prime Minister has, counter-attacked and shown that actually we are not vulnerable. We are actually in a stronger position. We can actually ward off this challenge by pinpointing that, those who throw stones should not be living in glass castles.
Right, sir. But are we effectively turning the tables when we have now, for the first time, an Indian government of the head of the government has talked about the Baloch angle so vividly?
Yes,
we can
indeed.
give it back to them tit for tat.
It's more than tit for tat, actually. I think it's a pretty well thought out policy. I think it also probably comes a little late in the day, but that doesn't matter. In diplomacy, when so much is at stake, it is perhaps not to be expected that policies are made like instant coffee. So I'm for as far as my opinion is concerned, I think the Prime Minister's statement was extremely well thought out. The criticism from some quarters that even within this, from analysts and commentators within India, that doesn't it look like meddling in Pakistan's internal affairs, just as we decry their meddling in whatever happens in Kashmir, which is absolutely wrong. He did not talk about independence or freedom for Balochistan. As far as Pak-occupied Kashmir is concerned, we have every right to raise it on every international platform and bilaterally, because that is part of India. Pakistan is an illegal occupant of that part of the planet. As far as Balochistan and Gilgit is concerned, he expressed implicitly and somewhat explicitly, he expressed the Indian government's opinion of what is happening there. There is no example anywhere in the world, and the world is ridden with conflict. There are many countries in which there are sections of the population which fight against the state, including armed insurgencies. But nowhere in the world except in Pakistan do you see aerial bombardment through fighter bombers and tanks being used against members of their own population. So to express an opinion about that is entirely correct. Implicit behind this is the fact that it adds to the, we hope, and we should work for it. It's not enough for the Prime Minister simply to make that statement. It should be followed up with concrete diplomatic action in nailing Pakistan on that, in exposing to the world its barbarism in Balochistan and in Gilgit.
And the reactions and the voices that are coming in from Balochistan, they're all over in media. Let's quickly listen to some of the Baloch leaders, their activists, what they have to say about Prime Minister's reach out to the people in Balochistan about Pakistan's misrule there. Let's listen it.
We are very thankful to PM Modi, the Prime Minister of India, and we are grateful to him. The whole Baloch nation is grateful to him, and this is a leading step towards the freedom of Balochistan, support for the freedom of Balochistan. The international support, it's a leading step, and I think all the world leaders, all the civilized world leaders, they should stand up with the Baloch cause and with the Baloch people. Help them move forward, help them get their independence.
I'd like to thank Mr. Narendra Modi for raising the issue of Balochistan. As India is aspiring to be a permanent member of the UN Security Council, I think Mr. Narendra Modi has proven that it deserves that seat, because India as a regional power should acknowledge the issues happening in its neighborhood. And I think the issue of Balochistan is an issue that needs attention, the world attention, and especially India's attention.
नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने जो बयान दिया है, जिसमें उन्होंने कहा है कि गिलगित बल्तिस्तान और आज़ाद कश्मीर और बलूचिस्तान में जो ह्यूमन राइट वायलेशंस हो रही हैं उनके बारे में आवाज़ उठाई जाएगी, उसका हर शख्स को खैर मकदम करना चाहिए। हम तो शुरू से कहते रहे हैं कि गिलगित बल्तिस्तान का मसला हो या बलूचिस्तान का हो या आज़ाद कश्मीर का हो, हर वो मुल्क या ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो कि स्टेक होल्डर है उसको एक्टिवली पार्टिसिपेट करना चाहिए और ये बहुत खुश आइन उनकी तरफ से बयान है.
All right, let's quickly get in more reactions on the voices that are coming in from Balochistan. Sriram, now, what does this do to the entire Kashmir unrest narrative, India-Pak relations, as far as what's happening in Kashmir at this particular juncture is concerned, the new dimension as far as these positive voices coming from Balochistan?
Well, I think it basically exposes the Pakistani designs, which have always been to try and create trouble and foment unrest from outside. And to some extent, we have our own problems with the way we are dealing with the valley. But at the end of the day, there is a democratically elected government, and we need to empower it. And there are ways that the Indian state has over time been able to manage a lot of these ethnic separatist movements around the nation. So we are much more successful. Pakistan is a state that has dismembered once in 1971. And now the Baloch and Gilgit and POK, there are movements, Baltistan and so on, which want independence. And they have signally failed repeatedly to be able to create a nation. And what I think Prime Minister Modi is saying is, how can a nation like this even aspire to grab Kashmir? I mean, what are we talking about? They cannot even manage their own insurgencies right now. They have so many of them. And on top of it, now they are laying claim. So I think it's important that we give them back in their own coin, and this is happening. It's also necessary. Earlier leaders, we were constrained by this being politically correct. I think Prime Minister is much bolder and fearless in his diplomacy, and that's what we are seeing.
Sir, the way Pakistan has been internationally campaigning the so-called freedom struggle in Kashmir and self-appointed guardian of the rights of Kashmiris, and now when you've got people from Balochistan reacting to Prime Minister Modi's speech yesterday, hailing it in all possible terms, for the international community and for Pakistan to do explaining that they have no hand in what's happening in Balochistan or has been happening in Balochistan, how does Pakistan explain this?
Well, you raise an interesting question. The point is not how Pakistan will respond to this. We know how they will respond to this. Pakistan's response to the overwhelming evidence the world over of its state sponsorship of terrorism, its role as the source of much of the terrorism in the world, especially the one that is directed to India, its utterly despicable record in this area is known to the world in excruciating detail. So we know exactly how they'll respond. It's a state in denial on that basis.
Right.
But it is incumbent on us, it is of the highest priority on India's foreign policy, it has been and should be, to expose Pakistan as a state that sponsors terrorism, that uses terrorists as state assets, which is dangerous to the whole world, not just to India. And therefore, now that we've overcome, you talked about constraints absolutely correctly. Whatever inhibitions we had in the past, I mean, I don't think we wanted to go that way for various reasons, not overtly and visibly and strongly. But now that whatever that inhibition was has been overcome, we should use this in two ways. One, of course, is to expose Pakistan's true nature, the nature of its government as a supporter and creator, supporter, a state that nurtures terrorism, and bring pressure to bear upon them, shame them in front of the world, and more than that, to bring pressure on those Western countries, specifically the United States, which has influence in Pakistan, which has all the evidence, much more than even us, about Pakistan's support for terrorism, which has asked Pakistan publicly to stop terrorism as far as the Haqqani network is concerned. We should use that as a pressure point on them as well.
Yes, just to quickly add to that, not to miss the revelations or the confessions made by recently captured Pakistan terrorists. I'm talking about Bahadur Ali. Well, how much of the exposing needs to be done as far as Pakistan is concerned? And India continues to be stern and tough to Pakistan. The message that goes loud and clear that you just walk the talk as far as the terror and Pakistan's role in fomenting that terror is concerned. We're going to slip into a very short commercial break. You're watching Late Edition. We'll continue the discussion on the other side. Stay tuned.
राजनीतिक स्वाधीनता या आजादी तो हमने 70 साल पहले प्राप्त कर ली थी, लेकिन ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी की तरह आज भी हजारों विदेशी कंपनियां साबुन, शैम्पू, क्रीम, टूथपेस्ट व कोल्ड ड्रिंक्स आदि बेचकर देश की आर्थिक लूट कर रही हैं। आइए हम सब देशभक्त भारतीय इस स्वाधीनता दिवस पर पतंजलि के स्वदेशी अभियान से जुड़कर देश को आर्थिक लूट व गुलामी से मुक्ति दिलाने का संकल्प लें। वंदे मातरम।
1 2 3
अरे
4।
ये काम के समय गिनती किस लिए? कोई खास बात है का?
हाँ है ना, अपने महात्मा गांधी नरेगा में अब बहुत से नए काम जुड़ गए हैं,
जैसे वर्मी कंपोस्टिंग और वृक्षारोपण,
जैसे मुर्गी और बकरी पालने के लिए शेड बनाना और मछली पालन।
और इतना ही नहीं, बाढ़ नियंत्रण और लघु सिंचाई जैसे और भी कई काम। तो खास बात हुई ना।
मिठाई से आप दूर रहते हैं, शुगर का डर जो है, सॉफ्ट ड्रिंक आप पीते नहीं, इसमें कैलोरीज ज्यादा जो, पराठे आप खाते नहीं, कोलेस्ट्रॉल जो बढ़ जाएगा। लेकिन इस मामले में एकदम फिट। आपका जवाब नहीं साहब। काले धन को भी ना कहें, अपनी सही आय घोषित करें। इनकम डिक्लेरेशंस की अघोषित आय आज ही डिक्लेयर करें। योजना 30 सितंबर 2016 तक लागू। डिक्लेयर की गई अघोषित आय का कुल 45% टैक्स भरें और विभिन्न बचावों का लाभ उठाएं। आप करें योगदान, बढ़ाएं अपना सम्मान।
जन्म से लेकर 5 साल तक की उम्र के बच्चों को 7 बार टीकाकरण के लिए लेकर जाना है। 7 बार में से एक भी छूटना नहीं चाहिए। ये जिम्मेदारी हम सबकी है। ये जो बीच के टीके भूल जाते हैं ना, ये देखिए अच्छी बात नहीं है। सारे टीके समय से लगेंगे, तभी जानलेवा बीमारियों से बच्चों को सुरक्षा मिलेगी। 5 साल 7 बार छूटे ना टीका एक भी बार।
ये साइड से थोड़े छोटे कर दे जल्दी।
ये वाला सर?
क्या है?
सर ये साइड से?
नहीं, नोज पियर्सिंग यहाँ पे।
परफेक्ट हो जाएगा मैम।
बिल्कुल दर्द नहीं होगा, पता भी नहीं चलेगा।
कुछ ऐसा ही करते हैं आप अपने गियरलेस स्कूटर के साथ। गियरलेस स्कूटर में कोई भी 40 ऑयल नहीं, सिर्फ सर्वो स्कूटोमैटिक 4ST ही डालिए। इसके फ्रिक्शन मॉडिफायर्स इंजन की परफॉर्मेंस बढ़ाए और आपकी राइड स्मूदर बनाए। सर्वो स्कूटोमैटिक 4ST।
These days, it's important to have an updated resume. Here's mine. Praful Kumar, Major Praful Kumar, Para Special Forces. 3 years served in a hostile zone. Tough assignment. Special service in J&K. Made some friends there. Combat free fall specialist. Willing to shed blood. As you can see, I wear my heart on my sleeve and my resume on my uniform. Which other company lets you do that?
We are India's most exciting workplace, and we are making you an offer. The Indian Army. Live a life less ordinary.
राजनीतिक स्वाधीनता या आजादी तो हमने 70 साल पहले प्राप्त कर ली थी, लेकिन ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी की तरह आज भी हजारों विदेशी कंपनियां साबुन, शैम्पू, क्रीम, टूथपेस्ट व कोल्ड ड्रिंक्स आदि बेचकर देश की आर्थिक लूट कर रही है। आइए हम सब देशभक्त भारतीय इस स्वाधीनता दिवस पर पतंजलि के स्वदेशी अभियान से जुड़कर देश को आर्थिक लूट व गुलामी से मुक्ति दिलाने का संकल्प लें। वंदे मातरम।
मिठाई से आप दूर रहते हैं, शुगर का डर जो है, सॉफ्ट ड्रिंक आप पीते नहीं, इसमें कैलोरीज ज्यादा जो, पराठे आप खाते नहीं, कोलेस्ट्रॉल जो बढ़ जाएगा। लेकिन इस मामले में एकदम फिट। आपका जवाब नहीं साहब। काले धन को भी ना कहें, अपनी सही आय घोषित करें। इनकम डिक्लेरेशंस की अघोषित आय आज ही डिक्लेयर करें। योजना 30 सितंबर 2016 तक लागू। डिक्लेयर की गई अघोषित आय का कुल 45% टैक्स भरें और विभिन्न बचावों का लाभ उठाएं। आप करें योगदान, बढ़ाएं अपना सम्मान।
राजनीतिक स्वाधीनता या आजादी तो हमने 70 साल पहले प्राप्त कर ली थी, लेकिन ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी की तरह आज भी हजारों विदेशी कंपनियां साबुन, शैम्पू, क्रीम, टूथपेस्ट व कोल्ड ड्रिंक्स आदि बेचकर देश की आर्थिक लूट कर रही है। आइए हम सब देशभक्त भारतीय इस स्वाधीनता दिवस पर पतंजलि के स्वदेशी अभियान से जुड़कर देश को आर्थिक लूट व गुलामी से मुक्ति दिलाने का संकल्प लें। वंदे मातरम।
Welcome back. You're watching Late Edition. Well, continuing our discussion on the Pakistan's latest offer on talks on Kashmir, which India has rejected. Now, various political leaders have actually welcomed Prime Minister Modi's strong stand on the issue of how we are now going to deal with Pakistan as far as the unrest in the Kashmir Valley is concerned. And let's just listen in some political reactions also.
दुनिया के अंदर जो बलूचिस्तान के जो रहने वाले लोग हैं या पाकिस्तान ऑक्युपाई कश्मीर के रहने वाले जो लोग हैं, जो दुनिया में अलग अलग शहरों में या देशों में रहते हैं, और वहाँ जिस तरह से लंबे समय से पाकिस्तानी फ़ौज बर्बरता कर रही है, उनके अधिकारों का हनन कर रही है, वहाँ कोई मानव अधिकारों की कोई सुनवाई नहीं होती है, फ़ौज की ही बर्बरता की बातें आपको सुनने में मिलती हैं, तो उनका पक्ष भारत की तरफ से रखा गया था। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने पिछले हफ्ते उसका जिक्र किया था और उसके ही जिक्र में वहाँ के लोगों ने शुक्रिया अदा किया प्रधानमंत्री जी का। तो आज हमने लाल किले की प्राचीर से उन तमाम लोगों का भी शुक्रिया अदा किया जिनसे हम कभी मिले नहीं, उनके शुक्रिया का हमने शुक्रिया अदा किया।
प्रधानमंत्री ने जो उत्पीड़न और जो ऑपरेशन चल रहा है पाकिस्तान अधिकृत कश्मीर पर, उस पर सही बोला है, और बलूचिस्तान में भी जो मानवीय अधिकार है, ह्यूमन राइट्स का उल्लंघन हो रहा है, जिस पैमाने पर हो रहा है, उस पर हमें बोलने की जरूरत है, और मैं समझता हूं ये ठीक है।
Okay, now, sir, going beyond this whole question of raking Balochistan issue by India for the first time, now if we have to talk about the forward movement as far as the relationship between the two neighbours are concerned, because we go back to 2 years, the way Prime Minister Modi reached out to Nawaz Sharif, and now the situation and the circumstances are totally different. Foreign policy point of view, do you see a big shift here, the way we are responding to the whole issue?
Well, I wouldn't like to use adjectives about big or, you know, what is big
okay,
or small,
a shift
but
or
there
some
is certainly a significant escalation in terms of the signals we are getting at the highest level of the government of where we are going in terms of Pakistan. You see, the thing is that in recent weeks and months, there were certain signals that the two sides were coming towards resuming what was hoped to be a slightly meaningful dialogue. You know, those chain of events after UFA, the meeting in Paris, the meeting of the National Security Advisors in Bangkok, and our Prime Minister's very dramatic dash to Lahore and so on. And then we had Pathankot, and then we had...
And then also participation in the SAARC summit in November, which was at that point in given that we'll go and attend.
And our foreign minister's visit for that Afghan meeting and so on. So the aftermath of that, and Pakistan's actions have shown very clearly that they haven't changed their policy of wanting to export terrorism to India to cause the maximum damage it can to India one little bit. So the Prime Minister's statement, I think, from the ramparts of the Red Fort, not only, it wasn't just talking about Balochistan in terms of putting pressure on Pakistan or exposing Pakistan to the world. It does, I think, indicate a hardening of stance on the side of the Indian government, which is, I think, very welcome, given Pakistan's record in the last few months. It should be, to my mind, it should be the beginning of sustained and vigorous diplomatic and political action to drive that point home. You know, a shift in policy is meaningless unless it is followed up upon. So one would hope that now, you know, the foreign policy apparatus of the government of India, through our ministry, through our embassies, and in general, all those elements that go towards projecting India's point of view in the international community, including international platforms like the UN, that they vigorously and actively pursue this policy of exposing Pakistan's state sponsorship of terrorism, not only against India, not only the dangers that it poses to the world, but the fact that this is a nation lost to all sense of responsibility, as any government should be, which uses the worst kind of terrorism against its own citizens.
And the nation which has to put actually its house in order. Sriram, would you like to add something more to it, considering the voices that we get from Kashmir Rally? The Chief Minister, she's time and again talked about former Prime Minister Vajpayee's healing touch to the people of Kashmir, etc. And now the stern stand that our government has taken against
occupied parts of these disturbed areas. India is actually the beacon. They've been looking for it. They've been always trying to reach out to us through various informal and formal means. Some of them have observer status in the UN system, and all of them want India to channel them, and therefore I think think in a way we are taking up the baton of freedom in this whole region, and actually we have the only right to speak about it because it's the only stable established democracy where minorities have some rights.
But just to quickly sum it up, just one line from both of you. Again, the foreign policy now and the relationship with Pakistan now. You said there's a significant shift or a significant change, but would you say that something which has not happened in the past, our relationship with the neighbor, now it's going to be something different? Very concrete.
You wanted a very brief answer. I think the overall relationship between India and Pakistan, as far as I see it, Pakistan is an enemy nation in terms of the fact that it wishes the maximum harm to India. That is what we have to respond to. And it uses a method which is state-sponsored terrorism, which should be unacceptable to the whole world. And therefore, anything that is done to put pressure on Pakistan to stop, and to put it very bluntly, the only thing I see that will make Pakistan stop is the pain of punishment.
Okay.
And whatever policy we adopt to produce this, to give this pain of punishment to Pakistan, whether it is diplomatic or political moves or forcible, I mean, you know, reacting with force to the attempts to promote terrorism in the Kashmir Valley or in the border states and so on. This, I think, represents an opening which should be pursued.
Okay.
I think Prime Minister has taken a very proactive approach in the regional policies. He wants to integrate the whole region. Pakistan has not realized its folly, and I think these moves will help change Pakistan's calculus, alter the increase the cost of terrorism and the cost of hostility, and bring them around eventually.
Bring them around eventually. Okay, on that note, thank you very much, both of you. Shiv Shankar Mukherjee, former senior diplomat. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on Late Edition, and also Dr. Sriram Cholya, expert on international relations. With that, we quickly need to wrap up this show. Meanwhile, news and updates continue on DD News. From me and my entire team of Late Edition, thank you very much for tuning in. Namaskar.